Coraline through the looking-glass. Rain pattered against the windows of the old pink palace. A sprawling house divided into apartments as Coraline Jones stared out at the gloomy garden. She had moved here with her parents just a week ago, and already boredom was setting in. Her parents, always busy with their work, barely looked up from their computers as Coraline sighed dramatically. "I'm going exploring," she announced, but received only distracted murmurs in response. Coraline was an odd child with unruly blue-black hair and a penchant for wearing raincoats and Wellington boots regardless of the weather. As she wandered the creaky hallways of the old house, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The wallpaper seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at it, and she could have sworn she heard tiny footsteps scurrying behind the walls. Her explorations led her to meet her eccentric neighbors. There was Mr. Bobo, who lived in the basement flat and claimed to be training a mouse circus. Upstairs were Miss Spink and Miss Forcible, retired actresses, who lived with a pack of aged Highland terriers and read tea leaves in their spare time. But it was the small door in the drawing room of her family's flat that truly captured Coraline's attention. It was old and ornate, with peeling paint and a large black key. When she first discovered it, the door opened onto nothing but a brick wall. Her mother explained that it must have been bricked up when the house was divided into flats. That night, as Coraline lay in bed, listening to the rain, she heard a soft scratching sound. Following the noise, she found herself back at the little door. To her amazement, it now stood slightly ajar. A cool breeze and the scent of something delicious wafting through the crack, heart pounding with excitement and a touch of fear. Coraline pushed the door open. Instead of a brick wall, she found a long, dark corridor. The wallpaper glowed faintly, illuminating her path as she crawled through. On the other side, Coraline emerged into a flat that looked eerily similar to her own, yet somehow better. The colors were brighter, the furniture newer, and the delicious smell was coming from the kitchen. Following her nose, she found a woman who looked just like her mother, but with one terrifying difference where her eyes should have been. There were two shiny black buttons. "Hello, Coraline," the button-eyed woman said with a warm smile. "I'm your other mother. We've been waiting for you." Coraline's mind reeled. Other mother. Other world. It was too fantastical to be true. And yet here she was. The other mother ushered her to a dining table laden with all of Coraline's favorite foods, things her real parents never had time to make. "Eat up, dear," the other mother encouraged. "Your other father will be joining us soon." As if on cue, a man who looked like Coraline's father, also with button eyes, entered the room. He was smiling and attentive. Nothing like the distracted, work-obsessed man Coraline knew. "Welcome, Coraline," he exclaimed. "We're so glad you finally found us. Would you like to see your room after dinner?" Coraline nodded, her mouth full of the most delicious chicken she had ever tasted. Everything here seemed perfect, too perfect. A nagging doubt gnawed at the back of her mind. But she pushed it aside, eager to see more of this wondrous other world. Her room was a child's paradise. Toys that moved on their own, books with pictures that came to life, and a wardrobe full of the most fantastic clothes she had ever seen. Coraline's head spun with the wonder of it all. "You can stay here forever if you like," the other mother said, her button eyes gleaming in the soft light. "We can play games, eat delicious food, and have wonderful adventures. All you need to do is let us love you." It sounded perfect, almost too good to be true. But as Coraline's initial excitement began to fade, she noticed small, unsettling details. The other mother's smile was a bit too wide, her movements a touch too jerky. And always, there were those unblinking button eyes. "Hi. I should probably get back," Coraline said hesitantly. "My real parents will be worried." The other mother's smile faltered for just a moment, a flicker of something dark passing across her face. But it was gone so quickly that Coraline wondered if she had imagined it. "Of course, dear," the other mother said smoothly. "But you'll come back to visit us, won't you? We'll be waiting." Coraline nodded, relief washing over her as she was led back to the little door. As she crawled through the tunnel, she could have sworn she heard a soft, disappointed sigh behind her. Back in her own world, everything seemed dull and lifeless in comparison. Her parents barely noticed she had been gone. Absorbed as they were in their work, Coraline went to bed that night with her head full of button-eyed people and magical rooms. The next day, Coraline found herself drawn back to the little door. This time, she was greeted not just by her other parents, but by other versions of Mir, Bobo and the actresses upstairs. They all had button eyes, but their personalities were livelier, their stories more exciting. The other Mr. Bobo actually had a mouse circus, which performed an elaborate show just for Coraline. The other Miss Spink and Miss Forcible put on a fantastical theatrical performance that left Coraline breathless with wonder. But as the days passed and Coraline spent more time in the other world, she began to notice cracks in the perfect fade. The edges of this reality seemed to fray when she wasn't looking directly at them, and the other mother's behavior became increasingly possessive and unsettling. It all came to a head when the other mother presented Coraline with a small box. Inside were 2 shiny black buttons and a spool of thread. "To make you one of us," the other mother explained, her smile now more predatory than welcoming. "So you can stay here forever." Horror washed over Coraline as she realized the true nature of this other world. It wasn't a paradise, it was a trap. And she had walked right into it. "No!" Coraline cried, backing away. "I won't do it. I want to go home." The other mother's face contorted with rage, her form shifting and growing until she towered over Coraline, all pretense of humanity gone. "You ungrateful child," she hissed. "After everything I've done for you." Coraline ran, her heart pounding as she sought the little door. But the other mother was faster, her spidery limbs carrying her across the room in impossible leaps. Just as Coraline reached the door, a cold hand grabbed her ankle. "You're not leaving," the other mother snarled. "You're mine now." With a strength born of desperation, Coraline kicked free and dove through the door. Slamming it shut behind her, she could hear the other mother's howls of rage as she scrambled back to her own world. Safe in her own flat, Coraline's relief was short-lived. She soon discovered that her real parents were missing, undoubtedly taken by the other mother as bait to lure Coraline back. Determined to save her parents and put an end to the other. Mother's schemes. Coraline prepared for battle, armed with nothing but her wits, a seeing stone given to her by the real Miss Spink, and an old black cat who seemed to know more than he let on. Coraline ventured back through the little door. The other world had changed. Gone was the vibrant, magical place she had first encountered. Now it was a twisted, nightmarish landscape that shifted and warped with each step. The other mother, no longer bothering with her human disguise, scuttled through the shadows on two long limbs, her button eyes gleaming with malevolent hunger. Coraline realized that she wasn't the first child to be lured here. The ghosts of other children, their essence, trapped by the other mother, begged Coraline to find their stolen souls and set them free. What followed was a harrowing game of cat and mouse. Coraline had to outsmart the other mother, navigating through treacherous landscapes and solving riddles, to find the souls of the ghost children and her own parents. The black cat, able to speak in this world, became Coraline's unlikely ally. "She's not my mother," Coraline told the cat, as they hid from the other mother's searching gaze. "Mothers don't eat their children." "How do you know?" the cat replied cryptically. "You're just a child." As Coraline collected the souls, each hidden in a small glass marble, she felt the other world beginning to unravel. The other mother's power was weakening, but her rage only grew stronger. The final confrontation took place in what had once been Coraline's magical other bedroom, now a decaying parody of childhood wonder. The other mother, her form twisted and monstrous, loomed over Coraline. "Why couldn't you be satisfied?" the creature hissed. "I would have loved you forever." "You don't know what love is," Coraline replied, her voice steady despite her fear. "Love doesn't trap or change people. It accepts them as they are." With that, Coraline threw the seeing stone at the other mother's face, shattering one of her button eyes. The creature howled in pain and fury, giving Coraline the opening. She needed to grab the snow globe that held her parents' souls and run for the little door. As she crawled through the tunnel, Coraline could feel the other world collapsing behind her. The other mother's anguished screams echoed in her ears as she emerged into her own flat, slamming the door shut for the last time. With her parents restored and the souls of the ghost children freed, Coraline thought her ordeal was over. But the other mother had one last trick up her sleeve. Her severed hand, a spider-like thing of needle-sharp fingers, had followed Coraline back to her world, intent on stealing the key to the little door and reopening the passage. In a final test of courage and cunning, Coraline lured the hand to an old well in the garden. With the help of the black cat, she tricked the hand into falling into the well's depths, trapping it forever. As Coraline threw the key in after the hand, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The nightmare was truly over. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such an experience. Coraline's parents, with no memory of their time as prisoners in the snow globe, remained as distracted as ever. But Coraline found she didn't mind as much anymore. She had a new appreciation for their quirks and flaws, understanding now that real love didn't require perfection. Her neighbors, too, seemed changed in her eyes. Mr. Bobo's imaginary mouse circus and Miss Spink and Miss Forcible's theatrical reminiscences no longer seemed boring, but charming in their eccentricity. Coraline had learned to find wonder in the real world, imperfect though it might be. The little door remained locked, the key lost in the depths of the well. But sometimes, late at night, Coraline thought she could hear faint scratching from behind the bricks. On those nights, she would hug her parents extra tight, grateful for their real, button-free eyes and genuine, if distracted, love. Coraline knew that the other mother's world of illusions and false promises was gone, but the memory of it would stay with her forever. It had taught her valuable lessons about bravery, the nature of love, and the importance of being true to oneself. As she drifted off to sleep each night, Coraline would whisper a quiet thanks to the black cat, wherever he might be, for his guidance and friendship during her ordeal. And though she never saw him again in the waking world, he often visited her dreams, a silent guardian against the nightmares that sometimes threatened. The Pink Palace and its inhabitants settled into a new rhythm. Coraline, no longer bored or restless, found endless adventures in the overgrown garden and the stories of her neighbors. She even started writing her own tales, inspired by her experiences, but transforming them into fantasies that delighted the neighborhood children. Years passed, and Coraline grew into a confident young woman, her childhood ordeal shaping her into someone who could face any challenge with courage and wit. The little door remained a secret known only to her, a reminder of the thin line between reality and fantasy, and the power of a child's determination. And if sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, she thought she heard the faint echo of button eyes clicking against the bricks, Coraline would simply smile, turn over in her bed, and dream of a world where cats could talk, and little girls could outsmart monsters. For Coraline Jones had learned the most important lesson of all, that the real world, with all its imperfections and challenges, was far more precious than any illusion of perfection, and that true love, in all its messy, distracted glory, was worth fighting for, even if it meant facing down Button-Eyed Other Mother and her world of terrifying wonders.